The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Six days before Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. They gave a dinner for him there, and Martha served, while Lazarus was one of those reclining at table with him. Mary took a liter of costly perfumed oil, made from genuine aromatic nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and dried them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. Then Judas the Iscariot, one of his disciples, and the one who would betray him, said, "Why was this oil not sold for 300 days' wages and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief and held the money bag, and used to steal the contributions. So Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Let her keep this for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." The large crowd of the Jews found out that he was there and came, not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. And the chief priests plotted to kill Lazarus too, because many of the Jews were turning away and believing in Jesus because of him. The Gospel of the Lord. My brothers and sisters, what is it that determines the morality of a human act? How do we know if what we're doing is right or wrong? If it's good or bad? If it's pleasing to God or not? There are three essential elements to look at. One is the object itself, the very action. Second is the intention of our hearts. And third are the circumstances. For an act to be good, all three must be good. If any one of them is not good, the entire act is corrupted. The entire act is evil or sinful. So, for example, most commonly we think of the intention of our hearts. Right? We know if the intention is wrong, the entire act is wrong. You can think of our Lord in these Lenten days, his words to the scribes and Pharisees. You fast and pray, a good thing, in order to be seen. The intention of your heart is wrong, and so your fasting and prayer is worthless. Or if we're giving money to somebody on the street, right? That's a great thing. But if we're doing it so that others will think well of us, it doesn't matter how much money we give. And what's the next step? After the intentions of our hearts, it's the action itself. And in the times that we live in, very often people think, well, gosh, so long as the intention is right, the whole thing's right. Something very common today. A good intention. I want to have a child. Me and my husband, we want to conceive a baby. Okay, how are you going to do that? You see all these billboards nowadays, IVF California, in vitro fertilization, or artificial insemination. They go, okay, that is a great thing that you want to do, but you have to choose means that are also good. To be artificially inseminated, or to have in vitro fertilization, a man must sin in order to make that happen. And you don't come together as spouses in an act of love to conceive that child. So even though your intention is good, the act in itself is wrong. But let's say the intention is good and the act is good. We're safe, right? Then we must look at the circumstances. I had a young man just the other day. I was baptizing a baby, and he came up to me afterwards, a young married man, probably in his late 20s. He said, "Father, do you have a minute?" I said, "Okay, sure." And I'd never seen this guy, never met him before. He said, my wife and I are having a tough time. She has a cousin of hers, a young woman, who wants to get married to her same-sex partner. And I said, "Honey, we can't do that." But she said, "Well, I love my cousin. Right? What's wrong if we go there just to support her? What's the intention? Love. What's the action? Going to a wedding. What's wrong with that? What are the circumstances? It's a same-sex union, which in and of itself goes against God's will. Doesn't matter how good the intention or how good the act itself is, the circumstances must also be good. So when Judas says, why don't we give this money to the poor? A good and noble thing. His intention, he didn't care about the poor. But what if his intention was good? That he really did want to give this money to the poor? He says it in front of everyone, which probably shamed Mary as she anointed our Lord's feet. The circumstances must also be good. My brothers and sisters, let's say everything is good. What ultimately determines the value then of an action? It is the love we put into it. When the intention is good, the object is good, and the circumstances are good, it's the degree of love with which we act that determines the merit it has in the eyes of God.